Hello sir. So today I Chetan Agarwal from EEE department. I and my colleague Parag Pratap Singh from EEE department are going to explain about the impact of COVID-19 on micro as well as macroeconomics of the India and as well as around the world. So sir, as you know how the countries it has a devastating effect on all the economies in the world as well as the major ones. Especially the minor ones have got affected a lot because like of poor economies, the weakening currencies and everything going around, it isn't a very good outlook. So we are going to explain how it can be improved and what's wrong with the economies around the world. So I'll explain the macroeconomic part, the one which is on the wider scale of things, the things like GDPs, the currencies, the equity market, the debt markets, the insurance, all the things, major things which govern. And on the microeconomic field, for my friend Parag will tell. So on the macroeconomic front, as you know, sir, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the public health emergencies. It has affected like almost every corner of the world, and it has prompted many of the countries to go into lockdown, which has affected economies on a very big scale. Especially the travel industry, the retail industry, the one which deals with like people being more aware of it. The ones in which spendings like luxury industry, people have become very much conservative in their approach. So as given by major banks like the Citibank, Goldman Sachs, and all the Morgan Stanleys, they are expecting a very neutral growth on GDP on the US and South and North America. For Europe, they are expecting a negative number. For emerging markets, what they're expecting is a very negative to neutral number. And for China, positive growth, but not what was expected on a year-on-year basis. As you can see on the next slide, this is the growth. So the one on the top left is the black is the median, so they're expecting around, on the global scale, they're expecting around 1% growth expectation by n percentage. In China, they're expecting good percent, but they were expecting 6, and on the lower side, they were expecting 2 or maybe 1.5. Now they're expecting around 3.5. And the European nations, they were expecting somewhere around neutral growth to -5, but now they're expecting -2. United States, they're expecting +2. The mid-range was from +2 to -4. But now, as the conditions are like getting better and whatever is their concern, they're expecting a very neutral growth over here. So now I'll talk how the capital markets affected. Sir, as we know that how the world is governed, how all the economies are emerged in itself, and each one of us are dependent. Like the Dow is dependent on Nifty, the Nifty is dependent on the S&P, and S&P independent on the and the FTSE and all. So that is how it is. So this coronavirus thing brought a lot of panic amongst the people. We saw the volatility index rising up to in levels of 80, which I haven't seen in the last, I think never it has been seen. So yeah, a lot happened. In the March 2020, we saw around a 30-35% drawdown on the major equity markets, and at that time the cases weren't that huge, but the fear among the people caused that kind of sell-off, which is just seen 3 times in the last memories: the 1987 crash, the 2008 housing bubble, and the 2001 internet bubble when all the tech companies started soaring. It has actually, a lot of loans were getting defaulted, so many of the sovereign those sovereign bonds, like the G-Secs and whatever government securities, their rates collapsed because a lot of people started selling bonds. So which caused the bond prices, a lot of people started buying bonds and shifting from equity to debt, because debt is always like the safer form, right? So once you buy the bonds, the bond price increase and the yield goes down. So that is what happened at that time. This reflects the seriousness of the current situation, and the prospects of the financial market and broader economy are now inexorably tied to how soon the virus can be brought under control and the life's business can return to normal. So that is how it is. So that is how the capital market played. So yeah. So as you can see, the major markets are here. So basically, the Jan to Feb, it was quite flat. The markets were doing nothing. But you can see the drawdown. Okay, this is almost a 40% drawdown in some of the countries, and almost everyone saw this drawdown because we are very much in that kind of scale. You understand? We're all very much together in this thing. That is how it happened. A strong fundamental. So there's an index called Guy Carpenter, which tells how people are spending their US dollar money, how people are spending their money. So the fundamentals of reinsurance remain strong. Despite a period of unprecedented catastrophic loss in the recent years, the sector continues to operate in an environment of plentiful capacity. This is basically the kind of the insurance thing which we are getting, like how the insurance happened and things. people have started getting more into insurance. The solvency ratios have fallen from 235% to 206%, which is a very good sign, because what we need is companies not going bankrupt, as in the case of 2008 crash. So this is basically the healthcare kind of a crash, but in 2008 it was basically a financial crisis, right? So this is what, as you can see in the slide, in the end it's written, given the challenges, the respectable outcomes, even if some ratios are towards the bottom of guidance levels, reinsurers remain in a reasonably shape overall. So this is what it means. So this is how it is. So how the people are how the investments are being done by a normal set of people in US. As you can see, most of them are into fixed income. You know why? Because that is more the safest form, and in this fixed income, I believe most of them would be in the government bonds, the government securities, or maybe some gold bonds. You can see there's some part of equity, some parts of cash and short term, so which is always a safe money. Very less real estate, because real estate, being a capital intensive business, is most likely to go under some serious issues. Loans, affiliated, and others. Now my friend Parag Pratap Singh will explain about the rest of the slides. Thank you, sir.
So I will continue the presentation from here. Myself, Parag Pratap Singh from 6th semester, Triple E department. So microeconomics. So introduction will be that beyond the human tragedy, there is a direct economic impact from lives lost in an outbreak. Families and loved ones lose their income and kind of contribution to household income, such as childcare of note, which means many of those most likely to die and are no longer working and are less likely to be primary provider for their families. Keeping in mind though that in many low and middle class economic countries, individuals work until a later age. Though less likely to pass away from COVID-19, many working age adults still fall ill and their families will feel the financial burden as they miss work for days or weeks. Most of the economic impact of the virus will be, as we are already seeing from aversion behavior, the actions people take to avoid catching the virus, which it should be noted, be logical and proportional response. As depicted in the figure above, the aversion behavior comes from three sources. First, the government imposed bans on certain types of activities, as when the government of China orders factories to shut down or Italy closes most shops throughout the country. Firms and institutions, including private colleges and schools, take proactive measures to avoid infection. Business closure, whether through government bans or business decision, result in lost wages for workers in many cases, especially in the informal economy, and there is no paid leave. Third, individuals reduce trips to the market, travel, going out, and other social activities. So this is a channel of potential economic impact of COVID-19. There is direct cost from sickness and mortality, which is affected to health center, and other impacts such as aversion behavior, which includes government mandates, firm and institutional decision, consumer choices, where government mandates govern all these factors such as education, manufacturing, retail services, trade and transport, which all have long-term effects and short-term effects. In long term, there is loss of human capital and infrastructure deterioration, and short terms it affects wages and income fails, and poverty of the nation hikes. So this is overview of the channel of the potential economic impact of COVID-19. For explaining further, there are short-term effects. These actions affect the sectors of the economy: the health sector, manufacturing, retail and other services, trade and transportation, education and others. These in turn translate into reduced income, both through supply side, reduced production drives up prices for consumers, and demand sides, reduced demand from consumer hurts business owners and their employees. These short-term economic impacts can translate into reduction in long-term growth as the health sector soaks up more resources and as people reduce social activities. Countries invest less in physical infrastructure. As school close, students lose opportunities to learn, hopefully briefly, but now more vulnerable students may not be returned to the education system, translating to long lower long-term earning trajectories for them and their families, and reduced overall human capital for the economies. So, what can we expect from this? So, an example will be like economic estimates of globally impact vary drastically, with Bloomberg hypothesizing 2.7 trillion in lost output, the Asian development scenarios from 77 billion to 347 billion, and OECD report taking a halving of global economic growth. Browning base of a as a multiple of monthly expenses versus December over January employed has seen a major impact, where the yellow line is the straight loan and green is CARES Act. Other other graph is of percentage of business facing major challenges like cash flow defect, raw material shortage, labor shortage.
By Parak and Chetan. Now, at the end, I would like to give a small brief summary of the impact that this pandemic has had on our country. So, in order to get an idea about the impact that it has had, we should first of all know that what is macroeconomics and what is microeconomics. That must have been clearly explained by my teammates. So, let's still go into a brief definition for the two. So macroeconomics, it is basically a very wide term. It is used to like check the overall functioning, economic functioning of a country. Like what is the job opportunities in a country? What is the unemployment rate in our country? What is our gross development produce domestic product? And like what is how much amount is the country producing, and what is the ratio of debt to GDP in our country. All these big terms that decide the future of a country, these are considered to be in microeconomics. Whereas microeconomics, on the other hand, it is more of a behavioral study. It is a behavioral study of people who have to allocate really scarce resources, and how is their interaction with the people. First of all, we will see that what are the challenges faced by our country. What are the main challenges? So the first challenges that is faced by our country, that is the imposing the stringent containment measures. So due to those stringent containment measures, it created a real problem, and everything was shut, everything was closed. So that led to reduced working hours. Reduced working hours led to reduced efficiency of our and output of our production plants. Then there was job loss. Many big companies, they did a layoff. They were really in a hurry to save their money, and like taking away jobs from many people. Then, due to this pandemic, there was an emergency-like situation created. Due to that emergency-like situation, government also had to ease its policies to provide credit at really low interest rates to people for the survival. Due to all these money that was used on health and everything, and the shutdown of trade, the GDP of our country, it was minus 7.97%. So all these economic back, like the problems that were faced, all these in economic problems. Now we should know that what are the policies, what can be done in order to revive. So the main policies of revival are that due to the reduced working hours, we need to make really flexible and agile policies for a few, at least 2 to 5 years, due to the rate at which we are relaxing all the stringent measures. After that, there should be certain sectors that have really growth potential, employment potential. They need to be funded to create jobs again. Government also should make its own efforts on its own part to rehabilitate our country. And after that, one of the main important things is the preserving of cross-border trade in case of a pandemic, because certain poor countries, they may not even have basic amenities available for people like food, grains, and medical supplies. So for them, it is really necessary to have a very good cross-border trade. After that, the two graphs that we see, these are the graphs that show the second figure is more important, that shows us about the per capita income of our like of a median OECD economy. So the red dot that we see till 2019, we can see that the graph is good, but after that